In the 1970s, the Philippines fell into a dictatorship under President Ferdinand Marcos, which was characterized by political repression, large-scale corruption, and human rights violations. Monopolies were also formed in key industries, which led to starvation, and heavy borrowing resulted in economic crashes during the mid-80s. The economy of the Philippines at this time was still largely agrarian, and throughout the 80s and early 90s, political and natural disasters led the country to one of its darkest ever periods since they gained independence in 1946.
To proclaim the independence of the Philippines as a separate and self-governing nation.
It was a period tainted with recessions, brain drain, and consistent decline in economic output. But today, following a series of positive reforms both internally and in cooperation with their Southeast Asian neighbors, the Philippines has transformed from an agrarian economy to a newly industrialized one which focuses on services and manufacturing. And they're now the world's 34th largest economy with a nominal GDP of almost $450 billion. So how has this famous archipelago been able to achieve this growth? Is it an economic Cinderella story or just a mirage fueled by debt? And what are the broader impacts of the Philippines economy on the rest of the Southeast Asian region? Let's dive right into it. Before we get into the Philippines' remarkable economic growth, we need to learn a few things about the country. Just like many other nations in Southeast Asia, the Philippines is an archipelagic country, meaning that it's made up of a group of islands, 7,641 islands to be precise. The islands are categorized geographically into three main divisions, Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao, and are part of the thousands of islands which form Indonesia, the world's largest archipelago. While the island nation doesn't share any true borders with other countries, it does share maritime borders with the likes of Taiwan, China, and Japan to the north, Palau to the east, Vietnam to the west, and Indonesia to the south, and is surrounded by the westward South China Sea, the Philippine Sea by its east, and the Celebes Sea down south. Home to around 110 million people, it is the world's 12th most populous country, but its true population uniqueness actually lies in the diversity of its people. With over 180 ethnic groups and 19 recognized regional languages, the cultural outlook of the Philippines is rather unique. This is because for centuries, its position along a popular global trade route and arable soil has meant that travelers from various cultures have settled there at different times in history. Over time, this migration pattern formed a unique culture and people, now native to the land, that are a blend of hundreds of cultures and peoples. Religion and racial outlook also played a role in the development of Filipino culture, especially in terms of social hierarchy. But that is a topic for another video. Following a change in constitution in 1987 and economic reforms which included privatization and deregulation of certain markets in the early 1990s, the Philippines began to slowly transform from an agrarian economy into a manufacturing and service-based one. In this period, the health sector was also developed and the infant mortality rate saw a decline of almost threefold in the 40 years between 1983 and 2023, while life expectancy shot up by over 15% as healthcare spending per capita increased almost 40-fold. Literacy rates were already good, but it's now over 96%, and crime rates have declined by more than fivefold. And this has led to a reported unemployment rate of just over 2%. The Philippine economy is still largely agriculture-based, with 24% of its workforce still working under agriculture in some form, but favorable policies have allowed for the growth of one of the largest tech hubs in Southeast Asia, capable of competing with their counterparts from across the world. They've also built a solid industrial sector based on processing and assembly operations, as they provide a valuable source of relatively cheap labor to large foreign multinational corporations within the production chain. Increased government investment into agriculture and transportation was reflected in the 2023 national budget as the leaders of the country seek to achieve food security and improve trade within its numerous islands. The Filipino diaspora, especially from across the West, also contribute a large portion to the country's growth, with 9% of its GDP in 2021 coming from remittances alone. The Philippines also occupies a vital geographic location which has not only facilitated a relative ease of trade across Asian nations, but also made it a point of interest in terms of foreign relations. With Taiwan located just over 100 miles away and the South China Sea to its west, the Philippines has quickly become a nation of interest, especially as tensions have continued to rise between China and Taiwan. Though the leadership of the Philippines has so far decided to remain neutral, they do have a mutual defense treaty with the United States, who are anything but neutral. China is one of the Philippines' biggest economic partners, both in terms of trade and in terms of financial assistance, with China often offering cheaper loans than their US counterparts. This means that China has been better able to exert some influence on the Filipino culture, and the US will find it hard to get Philippines 100% on board. A major reason why the Philippines is crucial to the economy of Southeast Asia is their contributions towards the group known as ASEAN, or the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. ASEAN is an organization formed in 1967 with a mission to promote peace, stability, cooperation, and economic growth within the Southeast Asian region, and the Philippines was one of its founding nations. There are currently 10 countries such as Myanmar, Brunei, Malaysia, Indonesia, Laos, Vietnam, Thailand, Cambodia, and Singapore in the association, with Timor-Leste a prospective 11th. And together they form a powerhouse of nations with shared cultures and values in what is one of the world's fastest-growing regions, especially in terms of its consumer market. The Philippines is a founding member of ASEAN and currently the fourth largest economy within the group. Combined with other nations in the group, the economy of ASEAN is the current seventh largest economy in the world. And with the way they plan to operate as almost a single nation by removing certain taxes and tariffs, this could only drive further growth. Despite the allure of ASEAN to foreign investors, they still face quite a number of issues. For one, not all the nations within ASEAN are developing at the same pace. Unstable leadership has played a role in this, with some nations being under democratic rule while others are under communist dictatorships. And Thailand is even ruled by a constitutional monarchy. This has a more negative outlook when you realize that decisions within ASEAN can only be made through unanimous voting. This makes it difficult to implement certain policies, as some member countries might feel like a decision might be less beneficial to them. But it actually makes it easier for interference from external influences such as China, who may work with the leadership of some nations to decline voting in favor of a law which could be unfavorable to the Chinese leadership. Corruption in government is also rampant among ASEAN member states, and this poses a threat to the uniformity in development which ASEAN aspires to achieve. This is especially aggravated by the lack of necessary infrastructure within some of the member countries, which means money that could have been used to improve trade relations might end up in the pockets of a few corrupt leaders. And the diversity within ASEAN is a blessing and a curse, as there is still a tendency for nations within ASEAN to be self-reliant due to cultural or traditional sentiments of superiority. Cross-border connectivity has also proven so far to be an issue to ASEAN, as its lower level of economic integration, when compared to a counterpart such as the European Union, means there are barriers to trade and labor mobility, as well as investment to create a single market. And this has led to income and growth disparities, both within ASEAN as a whole, but more tellingly, also within its individual member states. The region also relies on its tourism market, and events such as the COVID-19 pandemic really devastated the economies of many of its member states, including the Philippines, and they're only now recovering. But they need to drastically diversify the market, as future global tensions or recessions could easily affect their economy once again. With all the challenges the Philippines might face, its economy is still projected to grow to be the 22nd largest in the world by 2035 and the fourth in Asia by 2050. And ASEAN are also projected to have the world's fourth largest economy by then, with 70% of their population predicted to have attained a middle-class status by then. This would mean a higher purchasing power for most inhabitants, including Philippine nationals, who would further drive up the quality of its growing consumer market. There is an emphasis on the building of connective infrastructure such as roads, airports, and rail systems to connect people from all across ASEAN. This would only foster better relations and help in the growth of the nations with less developed economies. And with its high investment into tech and e-commerce, ASEAN is setting itself up to be the world's next large tech hub for startups, and the race to be the Asian Silicon Valley could be on. But the Philippines do have to make some decisions of their own when it comes to geopolitical tensions, as not all ASEAN nations are in such proximity to one of China's most coveted territories. In the face of globalization's current challenges, the Philippines would need to make a bold foreign policy move and make it clear whose side they want to play on rather than staying neutral. There have been signs of them making moves to do this too, as in November 2023 they finally exited China's trillion-dollar Belt and Road Initiative and will now focus on getting infrastructural connections with the West and Asian countries such as Japan. The Philippine government is also implementing an 8-point socioeconomic agenda over the next 5 years, with plans to achieve strong, sustainable growth in sectors such as health, education, infrastructure, climate change, and the promotion of peace. And moves like this, if not interfered with, will only go on to show why the Philippines is crucial to any future global dominance of Southeast Asia. But what do you think? Will the Philippines fully reach its potential to be a truly developed economy and an Asian superpower? Or is it all just a pipe dream fueled by speculation? Please share your thoughts in the comments below.